Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, you get to hear a conversation that I had with Raquel Eatmon. Raquel is a restaurant owner. She's also been a TV anchor, she's a speaker and author, and just has devoted a great deal of her life to helping others be better. And today, we get into what it means to honor yourself and to live authentically. And she really helped me in this conversation to think about some things differently. I'm reminded of that scripture that says, we should love others as we love ourselves. And today's conversation will challenge you to dig deep into how much you know yourself, how much you love yourself, and how much you honor yourself, your values, and your principles. Not in a selfish way, not in a preoccupied way, because the Bible also warns of that. But we get into this conversation of self-love, the difference between self-love and selfishness, and you get to hear Raquel's perspective on it, which I found very helpful in challenging myself and thinking about, am I striking the right balance of loving others well as I love myself? So let me tell you a little bit about Raquel so we can jump into this conversation. Raquel Eatmon is a serial entrepreneur. She is the CEO of Rising Media LLC, which is a leadership consulting company. She is a restaurateur of Osteria Italian in downtown Cleveland, Ohio. Shout out to Cleveland. She's also an author, the founder of the Women of Power Conference, and as I mentioned, a former television news anchor. So she's had a full and amazing career. And throughout her career, Raquel has interviewed thousands of scholars, civic leaders, experts on a range of leadership topics. She's researched and built leadership programs and like keynotes and forums, which is how she and I met, with companies such as Moen, Sherwin-Williams, and many, many others. And she's a communication catalyst, right? Catalyst for good conversations. And she has a backstory, which you'll get to hear about, built on resiliency, bold risk-taking, multiple generations, and just wholeheartedness, right? Really being authentic, and you'll get to hear her heart. Raquel's risk-taking led her to a new industry, hospitality, as a partner in her restaurant. When she isn't in this restaurant, she is traveling to corporations and to podcasts, lucky for us, helping others find the best in themselves. She speaks on a number of topics. One is innovative adaptability. And today we're talking about living authentically. You're going to love this conversation. There's so much to pick up on, so much to learn, and so much to challenge ourselves on. So thank you all so much for joining and enjoy. Welcome to Anelra. Have you ever thought about unlocking the full potential of yourself or the leaders in your organization? Imagine the impact of executive coaching. Ready to transform your leadership impact? Visit us at www.anelratalent.com. Anelra, coaching solutions that work. Well, Raquel, thank you so much for joining today's podcast. I am really looking forward to our conversation about authenticity and power and just spending time with ourselves. And I was thinking about this morning. I think the first time we met was at the conference. We were at a women's conference, and I think we were both by the registration table and realized we were both speakers. And there weren't that many women of color speakers. So we're like, oh, okay, you're speaking too. We had this really great conversation. And I remember bonding over the fact that we both brought our own makeup in our bags. They had a makeup artist on site for all the speakers. It was a green room. It was a really nice setup. But I think we either both had the experience or the knowledge that sometimes they don't have your shades.
Sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't. So I remember us saying, oh yeah, we definitely brought our own shades of makeup. Now their makeup artist ended up being fire. It was amazing, but we didn't know that. And so
Yes.
I remember that conversation, and it's just been so fun watching your journey from there through all the different things you've been able to do. So yeah, I'm looking forward to learning from you in this conversation for sure.
Well, thank you. I do remember that it was a highlight of that event because it was a chance to bond over something that I think other women of color have bonded over. Like, do you see your shade in that lineup?
Exactly.
But you're right. She ended up being fire. I thought she was fantastic with how she delivered. And I'm so glad that we kept in touch. And you may not know, but I remember we had a short conversation and I just wanted feedback on, hey, I'm sort of pivoting like everybody else in the world is, and I could use some feedback. And you gave such powerful questions in a short amount of time. And I still have those questions and I still use them. So there was a reason more than just the makeup shade that we needed to connect, my dear. So you have been wonderful and have given that wonderment to a lot of people. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That makes me happy. So I
Yes.
appreciate that. Um, I guess to start, I was thinking about you've done so many different things in your career, in your life. Like, how do you introduce yourselves to others? Like, what do you think is most important for us or for others to know about yourself when you introduce yourself to others?
Well, the resume says a lot, the business card says a lot, but I think if I whittle all of that down and I'm in an elevator and I just want to connect quickly, I was raised by three women, mom, grandma, and great grand.
Mm.
So there comes three generations of strength and three generations of drama.
I'm sure. And opinions, perhaps.
Oh my gosh, strong opinions.
Uh-huh.
And this is my story, and no one in the world has my story, the
Mm.
exact story. So I could say I'm a business owner. There are millions, billions of business owners, but if I really want to connect instantly, I just go within with what really matters. And I have such an affinity for women. But to understand where that comes from, it really comes from being raised by three fantastic women, and they taught me a lot, and then I had to learn the rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about leadership in my house, but they were in fact leading without even understanding that this is what it was called.
Mm.
They called it doing what you have to do to survive. So that's really important for me to say. This is where I come from. And then now, if I take everything that I do,
Yeah.
I I work hard to make the lives of other people a little bit better today.
Mm.
So all of the training and development, everything that I do, it's all about taking incremental steps and seeing how I can make an impact by making things better for you today. And then we'll do it again tomorrow.
Mm.
Right. So that's really important to me.
Ooh, I love that. And I like the idea of getting to the heart of what's unique about us or about you. Like, yeah, I can see how that's easier to connect with people than, to your point, the resume of things that we've done that lots of people have probably done as well. I love that. Okay.
Absolutely. It's a great networking tool. When I would do a lot of speeches on networking,
Hmm.
this was before COVID, I would always tell people, like, there's three things that you want to avoid saying when you introduce yourself. And it was really about being memorable, but more importantly than being memorable is, you could probably feel when I said, like, I was raised by three women.
Hmm.
Like, that means something to me. And every time I say it, there's a feeling that
Yeah.
is contagious. Even virtually, you might be able to feel that. So I think it's important, as people brand themselves, as people network, that you really speak up your story and feel it. And that will initiate a deeper contact or, connection more quickly than anything else you can say.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so now I have to ask, what's one of the things we should avoid saying? You said there are three things, so I'm wondering like how many of those are in my introduction when I meet people, but what's one or two of those things that you'd say, okay, avoid that, Arlene. Don't do that part.
Okay, so either we can look at it as questions or just things that we're saying. So when I go to a networking event, and I know we're not really talking about networking
Yes.
today, but this is a bonus. The bonus
Yes.
is before the real content. So when I go to a networking event, I don't care how many people are in the room. I am going to make three connections
Hmm.
that when I go home and call them or email them or send them a greeting card, they're going to know exactly who I am, because I'm going to spend some time talking. I don't want to know where you went to school.
Mm.
And I don't really care if you ask me that. I'd rather not, because people are sort of sizing me up and putting me into a box, and I would be doing the same. Oh, you went there, so that means just don't even go there.
Okay.
I don't ask what do you do,
Mm.
for the company that's on the tag? I mean, eventually we'll get there, but I'm not coming to you because I need a favor. So I'm not going to ask that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I don't talk about, especially here in Cleveland, I don't say, are you an East Sider or West Sider? I don't try to size up where people live, what's your community.
Yeah.
Now that leaves a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about. Um, and then people start to like say, well, hey, well, what else is there? Like, where did you vacation and who did you go with? What was that like?
Yeah.
Really? What color is that ocean? I've never been. And people will start to light up and go back into their minds about, oh my God, that I spent the most amazing girls trip or the most amazing time with my family.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things is sort of where I go. And if you start talking to me about dogs, we're going to talk for an hour. I just love to do that. Yeah. I love to do that. But that's great information for establishing a new connection. And I look at my connections as lifelong, either friends or acquaintances. So these are people that I want in my arsenal some kind of way for some reason. And I'm hoping that they'll feel the same vibe for me. So I'm able to have that quality time with them during networking.
Ooh, okay. I love that. Thank you for the bonus. Very helpful. And that definitely describes our meeting as well. It's definitely deeper than what do you do? Where'd you go to school? So yes, I get that from the connection standpoint. So let me ask you this. Now we've pivoted to our bonus back to like the core story. Can you share just like how you started your entrepreneurial journey? What inspired your recent pivot? Just tell us a little bit about what entrepreneurship means to you and how that got started.
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up thinking and knowing and believing that I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to be a television journalist. And my great grandfather would watch the evening news and he would say to me, you could do that. You really could do that. And I'm like, yes, I could. But I had this thing about interviewing people, like taking my hairbrush and, saying something and then putting it in my cousin's faces while they wanted to play board games. I'm like, tell me this, tell me that. So it was very natural for me to go to college for journalism, to get into the business. And the moment I walked through the door in Dayton, Ohio, WDTN, I said, I've made a mistake. I don't know where that came from. And I said, oh, Raquel, you're afraid. You're just scared at the moment. So let's figure this out. And I realized what was happening is in the meeting, everything was about terror, destruction. If it bleeds, it leads. It was all of that. And I thought that's not why I got into the news business. But I stayed for another decade, made my way to CBS in Dallas. I moved up very quickly. I was passionate about what I was doing. I just never developed a thick skin for telling people the worst thing that happened in their world overnight. I just didn't. And I tried. What I did enjoy was the fact that people trusted me to come into their homes, ask really hard questions, at sometimes the worst time in their lives. Like that really meant a lot. And this was before the media as it is today.
Yeah.
I enjoyed writing a story and being able to be a part of something. And most of these people I never did see ever again. So I don't know how things panned out for them. But I had a long talk with myself in a makeup room, going back to makeup.
Yeah.
And the tears just wouldn't stop. And I said, there has to be more to life than this. It has to be more. And I decided to figure out what that was. So I left the industry and I started my own communications company called Rising Media. And within that, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew what I wanted to do. And that was go back to being a part of the conversation about women in the workplace. So I developed this communications company. Now, what's interesting about communications for me, as long as I was in television news, all of the communication was really external. you're interviewing people, you're going back talking to your news directors, you're talking to your editors, you're getting ready for your live shots, you're getting ready to anchor the news. I'm talking. And there was very little time for the depth of that internal reflection. So I took this business, Rising Media, and I said, this is going to be an internal communications company. Only how do I tell the public that without everybody running crazy? Like, oh, she's talking about this, this spiritual stuff, and it's all these soft skills. We don't need that. And that's exactly what we needed.
Yeah.
But I developed a platform called Raquel Eatmon's Woman of Power Leadership Conference. It ran for 11 years. And I was shocked by the power of going within that we can then come out and deal externally. So to prove the power of that, going in, curating content, it was really a self-fulfilling prophecy that, I was putting together this conference thinking that other women needed to know these topics, and I was trying to figure them out for myself. Yes. But that's the best thing, that we have this in common. So that was really successful. I was surprised at how well it went, and I decided to do more keynotes. I started writing books, just all of those things under that corporate umbrella. So that entrepreneur piece was out of necessity for me. Now, then comes COVID. My business didn't transform well into virtual. So there was something else I needed to do. And I'm like talking to my husband, like, this is wild. What's next? I don't get it. So as the pandemic was happening, a lot of restaurants in our area was closing down because that's the first thing people stopped doing, was going out. And I'm thinking, this is the perfect time to go into the hospitality industry.
Okay, Raquel, say more about it. It seems like
this is the perfect time. My life works better when I go into the fire. It just does. It does, because this fear thing, I minimize fear by going into the one thing that I fear often. So I don't have a lot of head trash dealing with fear anymore. I mean, you have to be a risk taker in order to be an entrepreneur, I believe.
Yeah.
So for me, it was about taking those steps. The biggest step was leaving that journalism career where I thought I wanted to take it to CNN or Good Morning America. I thought that's what I wanted to do. Yeah. And it was different. Life was different. Something else was calling me. So to take that big step and not really have a backup plan, my husband to this day says, you never told me you were actually quitting. I thought I told you.
I didn't mention that.
I didn't mention it was time to go. So this pandemic is doing its thing, and my husband and I are talking, and sure enough, there is a restaurant that's dying on the vine, and my husband's a part of this conversation, and comes home and he says, hey, I think we could do this. And it was in such bad shape that I said, no, that I'll never do it. I'll never do that. And then a month later, I'm in it. And we had to clean a lot of things up. We had to terminate a full team and start over. And neither of us had a hospitality industry experience, except for working at Ponderosa when I was 16 years old. Thank you very much. And
a little different than your current.
Yes, a little different. And any listeners or viewers that don't know about Ponderosa, I'm not sure I can carry on with this conversation.
You're not our people if you don't know about Ponderosa.
We are people. So yes, that was it. So I got into the hospitality industry. And at first I thought it was all about the guest, all about the food. And once I started to develop the customer or the guest experience and train and develop the staff to meet those expectations, I realized this job is all about training and developing staff. That is what this is, who happens to bring really delicious food to the table. So I take care of the sales piece. we're at a 4.8 to 4.9 Google rating review, which is
Wow.
fantastic. It's
Congratulations.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And the name of the restaurant is Osteria Italian. So we're in downtown Cleveland. Again, going right into the fire. I am a woman of color. I am not Italian, but it is an Italian boutique, fine dining, white tablecloth restaurant. It takes you back to the 1950s. We're playing Sammy Davis Jr., Sarah Vaughan. Gosh, just really good music.
I'm catching the vibe.
Live music, yeah. Frank Sinatra, a lot of good stuff. Frank Sinatra isn't live, but we're playing live music, and
I know what you mean.
people try to imitate him. So that's it. And I did not see this coming, didn't really want it, but it seemed like something to do that could, one, employ people, and two, make people just feel good. Just come in and eat, and we're going to make sure that we find chefs that can make really great food, but we just want people to come together and feel good. So it was lovely seeing people come in and share big bowls of pasta, because during COVID, everyone was so isolated. Yeah. So folks were reaching across, the table, give me this, give me that. And I'm like, oh, we're getting back to normal. Yeah. We're getting back to normal. So that's the short story. Long story of how I've sort of made it to this space.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, to think about some of the shifts you've made, which are, really big shifts, and even just the knowledge of when you walked into that first newsroom, knowing like this isn't it. Like there's something wrong here, but eventually figuring out, okay, what that is and what you might want to do differently. You mentioned a couple of times with the conference, are there things going in? What does going in mean to you, and how do we do that? Like what is that to you, and how do we go about that?
So I call it going home. So my home is the only place in the world, like my physical home, this is the only place in the world I can control. And there's a lot of places and spaces in the world, but here I can control, the temperature of the home. I can control how quiet, how loud, it is, what it smells like, what it feels like when I walk through the door. So there's all of these things that I love about being at home. And when I'm traveling, I can take home is really here. And I heard a saying many, many, many years ago, home is where you make it. And I thought, how could that be when everything that you love is at your home? But taking a piece of that, that excitement, that excellence, that calmness, all of those things is really within. There's a word that I think we all use without really understanding what it is, and that's enjoy, ENJOY, enjoy. And I look at it as INJOY. So the joy is in. That's where it starts for me. And I think, especially for a lot of our younger people, they're looking for joy externally, and you never get it. It's so artificial that it's almost hurtful to think of, that it's manufactured in a way, which means you can't sustain it. But if we look at it both like an internal piece of joyfulness, now I got this joy, it's with me, this is going within, this is home, this is going home, this is being at home, and that's where joy starts for me.
Okay, I like that, going home, and then carrying that with you when you go out into the world. What are things that define home for you? Like what is it that when you're out in the world and you're carrying it with you, like what is it that you're carrying with you? What is home for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think about those three women. I still have my mother. The other two are in another space watching over me, or at least a part of me, and their mothers. So when I think about the price that those women paid. My mother was 16 years old when she had me.
Mm.
And she figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a village.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of the village, the neighbors, the Miss Marys,
Mm-hmm.
the Mr. Motons, all of those people who kind of came together to make sure that us kids were going to be okay.
Mm.
So that kind of love and compassion, it's a choice for me to think about that. I can also look at the other side of the world where my mother sent me to this private school on a voucher. She wanted me to have something that she didn't have. And I can think about the mean-spirited kids that called me those names because I was one of 5 Black kids in the entire school. But that's not the choice that I feel at home with. That's just a bad choice for me.
Mm.
So pick grace, pick the things that makes you weep, that you're
Mm-hmm.
so grateful that you could just weep.
Mm-hmm.
So collecting that data, I'm taking this today, I'm taking that. It's almost like getting dressed. I'm taking this, I'm taking that. And if I don't feel so good or I watch something, be careful what you watch on television, because
Yeah.
if it's violence on the screen, it could, it could evoke those types of emotion. So I'm very picky about what I pack
Mm-hmm.
and who I'm sort of rolling with.
Mm-hmm.
Just really careful about that energy, because the world is trying to tell us who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And now, even more so, it's whittling down. If you look at what your Spotify is sending your way, hey, take a look at this. We see that you're searching X, Y, and Z. Well, what if today I want to learn something new about country music, which I love, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
You're not giving me access to it because you see that I'm listening to all of these other things, or I'm reading all of these other things. So now we've got to be smarter than artificial intelligence and all of these, rhythms that are coming through the phone. So we really have to pay attention to what the world and our news feeds are trying to tell us. And very oftentimes go the opposite of where it's telling us we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it is packing that goodness and that grace in to set up for a really remarkable life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the choice in that, the choice of what part of your story you take with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I know you talk about honoring yourself and what that means. Like, what do you think about that? Like, what's your thoughts around honoring ourselves? Like, how do we do that? What that means to you? What are your thoughts about how we honor ourselves?
So I think about honor a little bit differently. Some people like to sort of gauge it with honoring yourself and being authentic, right? I think you and I chatted about this through email. So I listened to lots of podcasts, and one that I listened to called Chasing Life with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. He was interviewing a medical colleague, and the topic was happiness. So this doctor, I cannot remember his name at the moment, but he researched happiness for decades. So we could say that he's pretty well known, as he's documented all of the studies. So it was interesting, sort of toward the end, the podcast took a turn from happiness to a theme on authenticity. And the medical doctor who studied all of the happiness said, when I show up at work, there was a time that I wasn't being true to who I was. And it's almost like he thought he was living this double life. On the weekends, he really enjoyed going to like meditation retreats, studying Zen. And he didn't think that his colleagues would accept it or understand it. So he never talked about it. And then one day he just decided, I'm just going to tell them that this is what I do. And that's it. And I thought, how interesting is that we would be authentic to ourselves and say, I need to nurture myself. I want to go and study Zen. I want to practice that. I want to have meditative retreats. But yet we will sabotage that authenticity in order to make somebody else's comfortability with who we are better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, that's pretty deep. So when we talk about being authentic and then honoring in that text, it's like, oh, wait, you're way off. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a great story and a great setup for understanding that we can't have one without the other. You have to have, one and two. You've got to be able to honor yourself, and you've got to be true to
Mm-hmm.
yourself. You need to be authentic with everyone.
Yeah.
So the honoring part for me is really doing the work, understanding what are my guiding principles? What are my values? What do I believe in the most? What is this purpose that I'm changing? And those things ebb and flow. They can change as we grow wiser.
Yeah.
But I think that is where it all starts. And then when you can feel like I'm off my game today. Thought I would never thought that I would have said that to someone and possibly hurt his or her feelings.
Yeah.
So you kind of, recoil and go back in and sort of figure this out. But I think that's where honoring self really starts. Where are my principles in this
Mm-hmm.
world? And then are these my values or the values that my parents taught me when I was 5 and 8, and how has life changed that maybe I need to incorporate something else, or maybe I believe something a little different. But I think going inward and really questioning, what those beliefs are, that's
Mm-hmm.
where it starts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, is there a time in your life where you think, wow, I was really honoring myself and living authentically then, or either one, or a time where you say, wow, I wasn't honoring myself or I wasn't living authentically? Do you have like times in your life that kind of help you understand it better?
Yes. So when I started the restaurant, I did not know what I did not know.
Mm.
And I pretended.
Mm.
And it's a little confusing to me about the fake it until you make it versus the imposter syndrome. So I'm just going to say I was 100% the imposter.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So during the day, I'm going in pretending that I know exactly how to run this business. I've got, 3 male chefs in the kitchen that's been there probably 40 years combined. And, you got to pretend past that chef window.
Yeah.
I have servers and bartenders who know way more about it than I know.
Mm-hmm.
So going home, studying at night, reading everything, there was no time to go to business school. And I don't even know that I would have gone to business school, but there was just no time but I'm just doing all of this work.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I walked in, had on one of my favorite suits. I thought I was looking pretty good.
Uh-huh.
And I was going into our bathrooms, and there's double doors. So I went through the first door, and I overheard 2 of the servers talking. One of them said, God, Raquel is such a bee. And it wasn't brilliant. It wasn't bold or
Right.
brave,
Okay. Right.
and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, ouch. And the other one, she gives her 2 cents. So I opened the second door, and of course they were shocked. And
Yeah.
I couldn't say anything because the first thing I wanted to do was cry. And the
Mm-hmm.
second thing I wanted to do was curse.
Right.
So I'm saying, let's not do either one of these right now. So
Right.
they picked up the emotion and left. And I got into the stall. I stood there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what happened, but I started taking deep breaths, just really deep breaths.
Mm-hmm.
And I reached into my pocket. I had a Post-it note and an ink pen, which from the journalism days, I always have that on me, right? So
Uh-huh.
I just kept breathing, and I just started writing questions. What are you feeling? What's going on? Where are you? And that where are you
Mm.
was like, oh, I'm lost. I'm pretending to be something and someone that I'm not. So the word pause came to mind.
Mm.
Pause. Then there was a shift. So it was like this PS thing was just, it was almost like something else was guiding me. And I would like to think it was my 7-year-old self who was like, you were made for this moment.
Yeah.
But I said, you have not been doing what you do well. Like everything from your television days, everything from your consulting business, take and pull all of it, all of the advice from your grandmothers, take and pull the stuff, work on that stuff, figure out the rest of the stuff, or hire somebody to do the rest of the stuff. Just go and be you. So I tell you, Arlene, when I started writing, I still have those notes. I wish I had brought it with me. I still have those notes. I interview people very well. I can take this to the table. I can talk to my guests and speak to them. I have great eye contact. I'm relatable. You have to be relatable in order to get people to trust you as you're feeding them. You know how to do this. You know how to train and develop a staff that doesn't like you, that doesn't know you. Who cares? So what? Go for it. You know how to talk to men that might seem like a different type of leader than what you're used to. The things that you need to know, ask one of these guys. They'll be happy to help you. It turned the business around. More importantly, it turned me around. One of those chefs was a bartender many years prior before coming in to cook. And I asked him, hey, some days the bartender doesn't show up. I need to go and learn how to tend bar. And he taught me how to do this. I make a mean Manhattan for people that love that. I now have a clean margarita. Now we're talking about all kinds of stuff. So it's fresh ginger muddled with lime juice. We muddle Casamigo Reposado with that, and we'll add a little bit of agave nectar to sweeten it. And of course, it's called the Raquel.
Of course, right.
So all of these wonderful things started to come out of that. And the people that could not take my coaching, they just gradually left or got another job. And then new people came in. So that thing of always betting on yourself, it is so true. And for me, betting on self means honoring self. And if you're in a culture where you have to pretend to be someone else, or you feel like you have to, it doesn't mean that you have to leave, but you do have to go back and look at values, principles. What can I bring to the table that no one else can bring right now? Use that story, use everything that you have, and the rest will just fall into place. Learning the profit and loss, learning all of the systems that we needed to put in place, all of that will come. But for now, you got to survive. So that was a really big lesson for me. And there's been others, but that was a really like 1-2 punch in the gut. And I'm so glad that it happened.
Yeah. Because it sounds like that, because I think we've probably all heard that kind of fake it till you make it. And it's tempting when you're in new spaces or new levels of responsibility, or, to acknowledge or admit what you don't know can be really vulnerable, and maybe you can almost feel like it's not the right thing to do. But it sounds like your experience is against that idea of fake it. Like you would recommend not doing the fake it till you make it kind of an approach. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would. And I think that, vulnerability that, Brene Brown talked about, I think it's a lovely conversation to have. And I just remember the look on one of the chefs' face when I said, you know how to do this better than me. I need your help. Could you show me how?
Yeah.
And there's nothing in my head that's saying I'm your boss, but I need your help. It's no, you know how to do this better than I do. And I really need your help. And he helped for a long time. Of course, he was tasting every drink I was making, but
that's another issue. That's another topic. But when you were saying that, like when you finally said that to the chef, the other thing I was thinking is most of the time, if someone really knows what they're doing and they know it better than we do, they probably already knew we didn't know. That fake it till you make it probably doesn't work, because the people that really know you're faking it. Like they could probably pick up on that. So that's probably another reason it just doesn't work. It's hard if someone else really, like if someone comes into a space that well and they're faking it, it doesn't take long for you to be like, wait a minute, they don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Arlene doesn't know what she's doing right now. So yeah, it probably doesn't work actually when you say that.
I don't think it works well.
Yeah, it
No.
probably doesn't in most places. Okay, that's very helpful. It's very helpful. I know sometimes when we talk about honoring ourselves or being authentic, there are a couple things that can come up. I feel like one thing that can come up for people is honoring yourself can maybe feel selfish. I don't know, like self-honor, I'm honoring myself. Um, can you go too far with that? Like, how do you think about that in terms of just can you go too far with that? Can that be selfish? Like, what do you think about that in general?
I want to eradicate the word selfish.
Mm,
I've looked at this as a society, we've just like beat ourselves over the head with it.
mhm,
To answer the question directly, you can never pour into you too much.
mm,
And instead of using the word selfish, I use the word self interest
mm,
because life is going to give you a lot of ups and downs. It's just a part of it. We're going to be happy 2 days out of the month, and the rest of the month, oh, who knows?
right.
Grief is going to come.
Mhm,
It may last 10 years, it may last a lifetime, depending on who we lose.
mhm,
There's pains, there's emotional pain, physical pain, all of it is guaranteed to happen to all of us.
mhm,
So, because I can't control any of that, I have to control pouring into this vessel.
mm,
And no one else can do it the way you can do it because you know what you need.
mm,
And I'm married, happily married, have been for a long time. I think he knows me pretty well, but knowing exactly what I need,
mm,
no. My mother doesn't even know.
mhm,
So, self-interest, checking in with self, I do checkup and tune-ups with myself weekly. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? I need X, Y, and Z. Okay, is that a need? Is it a want? I go through it so quickly because I now have a muscle for it. But I think we should do it more often. In the morning, what do I need? Wait, I need quiet time for myself. Okay, let's get up a little bit earlier tomorrow and get it. If it's 5 minutes,
mm.
let's get it. Get
Yeah.
what you need. So, no, I don't think we need to talk about being selfish at all. It's all about self interest, and nobody else is going to take care of us the way we're going to take care of ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. You're not wrong. Like no one's gonna do it for sure. And
No,
yeah, and I like the word self-interest. It sounds different than self-absorbed. Self-interest feels a little bit more about taking care of yourself. Like you're saying, knowing you enough to know what you need, spending enough time with yourself to give yourself what you need. I could even see how in relationship it eases the burden on somebody else. Like sometimes I think we think, we're so focused on other people. But actually, if you were really taking care of you well, like if you think about marriage relationships or even collegial relationships, if you were really taking care of you well, that probably actually eases the burden on other people. Because you're not looking for them to do it.
I think so. And isn't that a part of being in a loving relationship is being responsible for your own feelings?
Mm, hmm. Let me write down some tips, right? My husband's gonna send you a thank you note.
Just
Be like,
not going
oh
to
my
argue with
God.
my husband about, I'm feeling and you're supposed to figure it out. No, the onus is on me to tell him
Mm,
these things and we can have an adult type of conversation about it and,
yeah.
hug it out. So
Right.
let's have a love fest after that.
Right.
But I'm going to take full ownership of knowing what this lady needs. Yeah.
Mm, that's good. Oh goodness. Okay. I love that. Okay, let me ask you one more question because now you've helped me change my perspective on something.
Oh, good.
Yes. So when you think about honoring ourselves again, kind of being authentic, something else I hear sometimes from clients or others, it can feel like being authentic can also mean stuck in our ways. Like, so I've
Mm.
heard people say, so I'm just curious on your perspective on this, well, I don't the most recent example, someone was talking, they'd gotten feedback about needing to speak up in a meeting or in a room. And they were like, well, I'm not comfortable doing that. That's not authentic for me. And so we were just exploring, like, what does this role require? Does it require you to speak up? How might you do that? But sometimes I think we use authentic as a bit of a cover. I don't know, for not wanting to change or not wanting to do things differently. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that though? Because you
Yeah, it sounds
differently.
exactly, I agree. It sounds like it's a crutch.
Hmm.
And, so there's, I don't know how many people remember Bobby Womack. He
Yes.
has, yeah, okay, we're going way back.
Yes.
There was one of the songs, and there's a line in there where he says, "You can't kid yourself. You can't fool yourself."
Mm.
And yeah, you can. So many people try, right? But like if I use authenticity as an excuse or a crutch for not turning on my Zoom camera during the meeting because
Hmm.
my mother told me that, you have to look a certain way. And today I'm just not feeling it. So I need to be authentic with who I am and not show up until I'm ready to show up or whatever.
Hmm.
And I think you have to, we have to challenge ourselves
Hmm.
in a way that rattles something in here.
Mm.
It's so easy to stay complacent and, I don't want to say mediocre,
Hmm.
but some people that is okay for them to just, stay in that lane. But I think that part of being true to who you are, that means you have to grow. I
Hmm.
mean, that's just a part of life. Life is about growth. Those of us that are looking for, to become leaders or to broaden, the voices in the community, whatever we're looking for,
Hmm.
you have to grow into those roles.
Hmm.
So if speaking up during a meeting isn't about being authentic, can't it be about making a contribution?
Hmm.
And can't it be about developing your personal brand? Can't it be about getting someone in your organization to know, love, and trust you? But in order to figure that out, there are so many questions, maybe not so many, but there are some questions that we have to ask ourselves about, am I really showing up
Hmm.
and being true to my values? Now, if that person's values is, to stay small, I
Hmm.
don't think anybody has a value to stay small.
Yeah.
But sometimes we do. We end up going someplace and we feel so out of touch with it that we just shrink down. That's
Hmm.
not honoring self. But I could use, I'm being authentic. I'm not speaking up. I could use that as a crutch or an excuse. But being aware that that's what we're doing,
Hmm.
I think that's the first step of just really understanding. Wait, what does authenticity mean to me?
Hmm.
And am I still climbing the ranks by being authentic, or am I now using it against the grain of doing good and being more
Hmm.
powerful? I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah. No, it does. Yeah. And to your point, I love even the Bobby Womack quote, like, yeah, you can fool yourself. It's possible, and it can actually be comfortable even, to fool ourselves about what's important and where we need to grow. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate that.
And
So,
here's another thing that might help all of us. Um, when I look at the work that it takes to run a business, and Arlene, I'm sure you've seen this in your business. Um, there's so many different systems that we put into place. There's the paying of your employees. You've got inventory. For me, it's ordering food and all of the things that makes the business work. There's understanding the needs of the customers. There's just all of these different systems. And by the time I pull all of that back and I sit and look at it, I'm like, that's really like who I am, like
mm,
me, the person. So I look at myself as a business, because certainly I'm a brand, and that's what a business is a brand.
Mm.
And if I look at myself as a business, my systems in place are going to be different, but it's that principles, the guiding principles, the values, needs versus wants, just all of those things. That is really where you find out a lot about who you are and how you're going to create this mapping system to have an incredible life.
Mm.
I don't think that an incredible life just happens. I think we have to have intention
Mm.
in order to gravitate toward that, or to, or to attract that in. There's a wonderful book. I'm reading it for the 7th time, Good to Great.
Wow.
And it was given to me by a news director when I was in Dallas. And he wrote in the book, it may seem like a business book, but this is really about self-management, to sum up his words. And at the time, I didn't understand, like, what, this makes no sense to me. I'm working for a major business. I don't understand any of this. So over time, I've read it over and over and over. And the author and his research team, they studied about 11 companies, businesses, and tried to figure out what made these companies go from good to being great. And this was over a decade or so of just research. And one of the companies was Walgreens, a place where I think most Americans have ventured in at one point. They wanted to turn it in, not to just a drugstore, but a convenience store. And there was just all of these little incremental steps that the CEO went through. And everyone sort of followed through with what they were supposed to do within this company. And they didn't know how great it was going to become. Suddenly, Walgreens were like 2 or 3 in one neighborhood. They were all over the place. Yeah. So they wanted to make everything convenient for everyone, that there was walkability, different hours for drive-through, all of those things. One of the things that made that company so great was resilience, because it failed at a lot of the things it was trying to do before it got to that main step. There were a lot of small steps that didn't work, and then a lot of other steps to repeat that. And I'm like, that is so like life. Yeah. It's so like life. So you talk about adaptability and how this company started to just sort of change and go with what was changing. Certainly vulnerable communities, public transportation started to be pulled from some of those spaces. Well, let's make it walkable. Let's have a little smaller drive-through or walk-through for people. So there was all of that, and now it's changing again. Yeah. But it's so much like how life truly is for us. And in that book, I want to share this with listeners and the viewers. I pulled these questions. There was a lot of questions that these good to great companies would ask itself over and over and over and over. And some of these questions, Arlene, I think you had some of these questions when you and I talked. I think those questions and finding the answers to those questions is what really can help us stay in an honor code with ourselves. Mm-hmm. So one of them, am I in alignment with my purpose, the work that I'm doing? Mm-hmm. 2, am I questioning and answering the brutal facts of what I need to change? Mm. And the brutal facts, like that story of the lady saying, I'm being inauthentic if I don't contribute. Really what you're saying is, what, you don't want to speak up because of what? What's the brutal truth of that? Mm. And that's when we really start to kick our own self in the tail, right? Like, girl, you're going to have to change this if you want to elevate in that position. Right. 3, am I in integrity with myself and others? For me, integrity means showing up, doing what I said I was going to do. And when I drop the ball, apologize and keep moving. Try not to give excuses, because nobody really wants to hear the excuse. The thing is, you didn't show up, yeah. 4, the people-pleasing complex. This is something that I've worked on with some of my clients, that people-pleasing behavior. Do I spend a lot of energy trying to motivate and inspire people? Or is my work infectious? Mm. And see, that was that imposter piece for me, trying to motivate and inspire, and my work wasn't infectious. So let the work speak for itself. Mm. And I think when we figure out how to do those things, life gets a lot easier, and we'll start to find time to do the other things that we need to do for that self-interest piece.
Mm-hmm.
So those are just a couple of things that I think we can look at as we go into this new phase of living a truly remarkable and incredible life.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Now I got to go reread the book. I love that book. I've read it, and I've to your point, I think I thought about it as a business lens. It might be on one of these, it's probably on one of these shelves back here because I do love that
Yeah.
book. But I don't know if I know I have not ever thought about it as a personal development lens. Like, how am I personally moving from good to great? But those are great questions. Yeah, alignment with purpose. What's the brutal truth about where things need to change? Um, yeah, that's a really practical tool for kind of going in and doing that check-in with yourself to see, okay, am I really in alignment or not?
Right.
I love
Right.
that. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to, at the end, I'll give you a chance just to share anything you'd like to, but think I mentioned to you one thing I wanted to do as an aside before we do the lightning round is hear about solo travel. So I know you've done solo travel, and I think I was reading a post about one of your most recent experiences. And I'm planning to travel solo, as I mentioned, later this fall too, which I've done a little before, but not as much as I'm planning to do this fall. So I think about honoring ourselves and authenticity. Solo travel kind of fits into that concept. So I'm curious,
Yes, it
tell me
does.
about solo travel. Like, what does it mean to you, or any tips you have for how we might make the most of, those of us who are doing that?
Yes. So, um, all right. So you, my dear, are the master of talking about burnout and engaging a heartful conversation around that. It's been a nurturing space for you, and I think very healing for a lot of people. And I was at that place of burnout earlier this year, and I moved some things out of the way. I took a month off in June,
Mm,
and I took myself to the mountains in Arizona.
wow.
And I would suggest that if you're taking a trip for 2 days, a mini sabbatical, whatever it is that you're doing right now, I was so exhausted. I didn't have time to think about a list of what I need to.
Okay.
Here's what I did. I got myself on the plane. I'm not even sure what I packed.
Hey, you did the most important thing. You got yourself on that
I
plane.
got
Okay.
myself on the plane. Now, every time I travel, I do to honor self-interest. I take my favorite things. And usually if it's summertime, it's cherries. I love fresh cherries. It's dark chocolate,
Hmm,
almonds, and when I get on the plane, I have one glass of red wine.
okay.
So a Cabernet Sauvignon was
Yeah.
perfect. So I did have enough sense to do that.
Okay.
And I got on the plane and took out my little notepad, and instead of saying, what do I want to do? What do you need?
Hmm.
Raquel, what do you need? And I just sleep, hiking,
Mm-hmm.
sunshine. It was basic things. I did say buy yourself a gift. There's just this little. So the first 3 days for me, I slept,
Hmm.
and I was okay with that. Please give yourself permission to be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
We work so hard. Laziness is earned to watch television about nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But being up in the mountains, I chant when I'm in the mountains. I'm not listening to anything, but I chant, and there's just hearing your breath, hearing, the things that you want to say. Who am I? Where am I? Why am I? Just those sorts of things of just connecting with self.
Yeah.
And I did something really different on this particular journey. I went back to some things that I loved about being, a kid in first grade or wherever.
Hmm.
And remember, we had arts and crafts time.
Yes.
I haven't done that probably since. I don't, maybe I did it with my goddaughter, but I couldn't remember. So I realized I didn't bring my journal because it was so heavy. It's a heavier, larger journal. So I went to the grocery store, paid 80 cents for just a regular little notebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a bunch of magazines.
Oh.
And so I changed the cover. And this is, I think this is the city. That might be Scottsdale at night. So I just pasted all of this stuff on here. It was so much fun. Yeah. And I was messy with it. And I made a book to myself called The New Rules.
Mm.
Within this book, every day, I answered a question that I had never answered before. How are you going to handle your next set of problems? Like, I haven't really sat and thought about that. And what are the impact of those problems? So I wrote out sort of a manual for myself. How am I going to solve these problems? How will I schedule private moments to face reality, no matter how harsh it is? How much privacy do I need? And I mean, I'm just writing all of this stuff. So when I got back home and I pulled that out, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Now I know how to avoid burnout.
Yeah.
From just that quiet time. So there's so many things that we can do on those solo trips. I fed myself especially well. I mean, really, really well.
Yeah.
I did a 48-hour water fast because that was something I felt my body needed to sort of restart. I did it at a time where it wasn't stressful. It was super easy. Swam, hiked. Solo travel, make sure that you are communicating with one person, during the day. Every time I went hiking, I would check in with someone to say, hey, I'm at McDowell Mountains. This is the time. Here's a photo. Yeah. I have my ID on me, that kind of thing, to make sure that someone knows she's in the mountain. She's out of the mountain. She's okay. Yeah. And my mother really appreciated that.
I'm sure she did.
Like, what are you doing? And, and here's the thing. My mother wanted to go. She wanted to go on this trip with me. And I said, no, I'm sorry. I need this time to be alone. My husband said, well, I could pop in. Nope.
I'm good.
Love you, babe. I need this time. And it was the best decision I made for myself, to just spend that time alone. And I met a lot of fantastic people and hiked with the natives at 5:30 in the morning. When you're feeling that enjoyment, the I enjoyment from within, you're always going to attract kind people that are also feeling that and will help you along the way. So I think it's important to figure out what you need versus what the body is or mind might be telling you need. Like an app saying, aren't you hungry for this? Like, no, I'm really not. Oh, wait, yes, I kind of am now. That's you're saying it. I didn't have any technology other than texting my whereabouts. So I didn't even know there was a presidential debate. And I tend to follow national and international news. I had no idea until I heard it in a coffee shop. I'm like, oh, I missed it. I missed the whole thing. Good job.
Yeah, exactly. Good job.
Yeah. Yeah. So just go inward and really enjoy the peacefulness of being with yourself. It's, it's just so much that we have access to. And I think going away and being with oneself can really reveal that to you. And you'll find tremendous gratitude in what you've been able to achieve in your life. The people that you contribute to, the communities that you affect. I mean, it really can give you a great sense of who you are.
Wow. Okay. I'm looking forward to this. I'm not doing a month yet, but I'm looking forward to this. And I love that you knew that you needed it and were willing to kind of because I'm sure, a lot of other things you could have done and probably people wanted you to do during that month when you were away. But I love that you were able to prioritize what you needed.
Yes.
Put those things to the side and do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to know that there was a time I couldn't even take a week
Mm-hmm.
I've worked up to create a life like this to where I'm taking a month away. I'm
Yeah.
just, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out. So sometimes the sanctuary of your home might be it. And that is totally fine.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. Go where you can to save
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
however much time you have,
Mm-hmm.
you could do a month, or 1 day a week here or 1 day a month here.
Yeah.
You figure it out and make it work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely life has different constraints and different seasons for sure, for sure.
Yes.
So you have to
Yes.
figure out what works for you. Mm-hmm.
Now available. You deserve to love your job. How to find your purpose and enjoy your life. You may not have learned this growing up, but you deserve to love your job. You will spend more time at work than in any other activity in your life, and you deserve to love it. Research tells us that people who love their work are twice as likely to enjoy their life. This book will help you create a blueprint to help you fulfill your purpose, love your job, and live the life you were designed to live. Now available at Amazon.
Okay, so I like to do a lightning round at the end.
Oh, okay, I'm
It's
ready.
just quick questions, quick answers, just so people get to know you better. One of them was, what is your favorite book? But I don't know. We already kind of explored that. Maybe I don't know. Is Good to Great your favorite book?
It
Or
is my favorite book.
okay.
A close second is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Maya Angelou,
Oh, yes.
whom I interviewed her, and she is everything that she has ever written and ever spoke
Mm.
about. She was all of that.
Wow, I need to read that one again. That's another one I need to put back on my read again list.
Oh yeah, it's good. Good.
What legacy do you hope to leave behind?
So I don't think about legacy
Hmm.
at all. I think about destiny. Um, I think I'm just made up that way to really see the impact that I'm able to make while I'm here. Like
Mm.
I'm really one of those people, like, I'm good with you giving me my flowers now. I'm
Right.
really good at that.
Yes.
I don't really know what's happening after all of this.
Mm.
So I want to see it all come to fruition while I can.
Mm.
And if I'm talking about helping to make people's lives a bit better today, I want to see that
Yeah.
today or hear about it the next day. So I really think about destiny. And
Mm.
that might sound self-interest.
Which is not selfish, we've learned. So there's, yeah,
Yes, exactly.
not selfish.
Yes. I want to see that and be able to sit back at 105 or whatever it is. It's like, that was really cool. That was
Yeah.
really a great conversation that we had.
Mm.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Okay. What is one thing you do consistently to enjoy, enjoy your life?
So I have morning rituals.
Hmm.
It starts with waking up and smiling for 30 seconds.
Hmm.
Do we need a reason to smile? Absolutely. We're above ground.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets the endorphins going. I'm alive. I'm grateful. It sets the day.
Yeah.
Now, there are other steps that I take. I know you asked for one. I have to tell you, I make matcha tea, and there's the ceremonial grade powder that I order. And there is the, warming the water, warming the cup that I will mix all of this in. There's this mindfulness that comes with making that tea
Mm.
that is a part of being at home, both physically and that inward home. So that right there, if I'm out of tea, it's a tragedy. So
This is a part of your enjoying your day for sure. Yeah.
that is my jam. That is my thing.
Mm.
And I have a lot of gratitude, and I'm glad to have the resources to be able to, to do that. We look at other countries, people in other countries, they're needing water, and here I am having a kind moment with myself over a really fantastic cup of tea.
Wow.
That's it. I love it.
All right. And last question, what is one word of wisdom or piece of advice that you live by?
Everything is getting better and better for me right now.
Mm. Yeah, in every moment. In every moment.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. Any last words you want to share with the audience? And definitely tell us the name and the location of the restaurant again as well. But any kind of final words before we get ready to close out?
So the restaurant is Osteria Italian. We are downtown Cleveland, so it's CLE.com is the website. Very proud of the work that we've been able to do there. Collective team, it's been wonderful. And I think any parting words, I just really want to see us all living a life that we love, that we dream about, because it's doable. Mm-hmm. So I think these incremental steps, a little bit every day, takes the pressure and the anxiety off of trying to be it all right now. Mm-hmm. And I want people to relax a little bit and enjoy the ride. The journey is a part of it. Mm-hmm. It's a part of it. And we're always on the journey. I'm a lifelong learner, so we're always on the journey. But I just want people to really fall in love with themselves and say, hey, you know what? I'm okay. Yeah. I'm okay, especially our younger women and our young men who are facing a lot of loneliness, a lot of challenges there. Mm-hmm. So I am just, I'm just excited about where we are and having these conversations. Thank you so much for building a platform to have these safe conversations that will be here. Speaking of legacy, like this will be here forever for people to have a constant connection in a way. So thank you for building this. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you for joining. And I love those words. And yeah, I definitely want my daughter and all the young people I love to hear this conversation, because I think the point around being authentic, honoring ourselves, being intentional about knowing who we are and being able to take care of our own needs and interests is like, that's it. I mean, there's so much in that brings so much joy for ourselves and honestly those around us too. So
yeah, it really does.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing and thank you for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Of course, of course. So thank you all so much for joining today's conversation. As always, if you're not in my email group, you can click join the crew in the show notes or use the QR code after. We'll have all of Raquel's information in there as well, so you can connect with her. You can always find me on Instagram at Arlene_pace_green. And if no one has told you today, we want you to know we love you. We are so, so proud of you. You are killing the game, and we're going to keep killing it without killing ourselves in the process. Thank you all for joining, and be well.